Welcome to my philosophy channel. Why do we wake up every morning feeling an inexplicable sense of dread, despite living in an era of unprecedented material abundance? We are surrounded by comforts our ancestors could not imagine, yet a pervasive emptiness haunts our every waking hour. We possess endless entertainment at our fingertips, infinite consumption, choices, and life-extending medical miracles. But we are fundamentally paralyzed by anxiety. Is it not a profound paradox that the more we accumulate, the more impoverished our souls seem to become? We look at previous generations who labored endlessly just to survive, enduring famines and wars, and notice a strange phenomenon. They seemed to possess a quiet resilience and deeply rooted contentment that completely eludes the modern individual. We have conquered the physical environment, yet we are drowning in psychological torment. We work exhausting hours not for bread, but for status. We bind ourselves to 30-year mortgages to purchase houses we barely have time to live in. We scroll endlessly through glowing screens, passively consuming the curated illusions of other people's lives. Comparing our painful internal realities with their carefully filtered external facades, we are desperately chasing a concept called happiness, believing it is a tangible destination waiting for us once we achieve the right job, partner, or bank balance. But what if this entire paradigm is a devastating illusion? What if happiness, as we culturally understand it, does not actually exist? What if our deepest sufferings do not stem from our failures, but from our very biology and consciousness? Today, we will deconstruct human desire, suffering, and meaning, journeying into the dark labyrinths of existential philosophy, guided by Arthur Schopenhauer and Friedrich Nietzsche. We will strip away modern consumerism's lies and confront the raw, unfiltered truth of human existence. We will explore why you feel isolated in a crowded world, why your achievements never bring lasting satisfaction, and why the death of traditional beliefs has left us teetering on the edge of a nihilistic abyss. But more importantly, we will discover how to reconstruct meaning from the ruins of disillusionment. This is not mere academic theory. It is a philosophical autopsy of your life and an invitation to reclaim your existence. Chapter 1: The Illusion of Happiness and the Tyranny of Desire. To understand the pervasive melancholy of the modern epoch, we must first radically redefine happiness. We are socialized to view it as a positive, attainable state, an accumulation of joyful experiences and material triumphs. But Arthur Schopenhauer offers a brutal correction. Happiness is fundamentally negative. It is not the presence of joy, but merely the temporary absence of pain. Think about your own physical experience. When your body is completely healthy, you feel no overwhelming rush of health. You feel nothing at all, simply unaware of your organs. But the moment you get a toothache, that pain becomes the absolute center of your universe. The pain is intensely positive and real. The health was merely the absence of that pain. Schopenhauer argues our psychological lives operate on the exact same mechanics. Our desires are the toothaches of the soul. When we want a promotion, new car, or romantic validation, we experience a state of lack that manifests as psychological pain. We strive and suffer endlessly to fulfill this desire. And what happens when we finally achieve it? The agony of the chase subsides, the tension is released, and for a fleeting moment, we call this relief happiness. But it is an illusion that evaporates almost instantly. We buy the luxury car we dreamed of for years, and within a few weeks, it simply becomes transportation. We marry the partner we desperately chased, and soon the thrill settles into mundane domestic routine. This is because humans are desiring machines, programmed by nature not to be content, but to perpetually strive. Once one desire is satisfied, a new one immediately rises to take its place, like waves following one another. If we have no new desire to pursue and all immediate needs are met, we do not fall into blissful nirvana. Instead, we are plunged into the suffocating abyss of boredom. Schopenhauer famously declared that human life swings like a pendulum between pain and boredom. When we lack, we suffer pain. When we possess, we suffer boredom. Consider modern consumer society. We are surrounded by unprecedented abundance, yet we are more anxious than any previous generation. This is because the system relies on the artificial multiplication of desire. We do not just need food, we need artisanal culinary experiences to post on social media. We do not just need shelter, we need curated homes that signal our socio-economic dominance. The expansion of our desires mathematically guarantees the expansion of our suffering. Our grandparents were happier because their desires were simple and immediate: food, warmth, survival. By stripping away complex layers of artificial needs, they remained closer to baseline contentment. We have overcomplicated our existence, mistaking external accumulation for internal fulfillment. Chapter summary: True happiness is merely the temporary absence of suffering, and the artificial expansion of modern desires only amplifies our perpetual dissatisfaction. Chapter 2: The blind will and the tragedy of human consciousness. If our desires constantly lead to suffering and boredom, why can we not simply choose to stop desiring? Why are we compelled to run endlessly on this hedonic treadmill? Schopenhauer answers with his magnum opus, The Concept of the Will. Beneath logic, reason, and intellect, there exists a primeval, blind, aimless force that drives all of existence. He called this the will to life. It is the unconscious urge that pushes seeds to break through soil, predators to hunt prey, and humans to survive and reproduce. The will has no grand master plan. It does not care about your happiness, morality, or fulfillment. It merely wants to persevere. Your intellect, which you believe masters your actions, is actually a mere servant to this blind will. You do not choose what you desire. The will commands you to desire, and your intellect scrambles to find logical justifications for those primal urges. We see this everywhere in human behavior. We fall intensely in love, believing we found our soulmate through cosmic destiny, while in reality, it is often the will manipulating our chemistry to ensure species continuation. Once the evolutionary purpose is served, the delusion fades, leaving behind the harsh reality of human incompatibility. But the true tragedy arises when the blind will intersects with our evolved consciousness. Animals possess the will to life, but their suffering is limited to the immediate present. A deer feels fear only when the wolf is directly in front of it. Once danger passes, it returns to grazing. Humans, however, possess the double-edged sword of memory and imagination. We suffer not only from present hardships, but from past regrets and terrifying anticipations of a future that has not yet arrived. We lie awake at night, tormented by a minor embarrassment that occurred 10 years ago. We are crippled by anticipatory anxiety of financial ruin, illness, and ultimate mortality. Our advanced consciousness allows us to mentally construct 1,000 different scenarios of ruin, suffering through tragedies that will never actually happen. In this light, consciousness is not a divine gift. It is a cruel evolutionary mistake that magnifies pain exponentially. We try to escape this pain through constant distraction. We fill our ears with noise, our screens with endless scrolling, and our bodies with intoxicants, all to silence the deafening roar of our own minds. But the distractions are temporary, and the will remains, endlessly hungry and demanding. We find ourselves in an impossible situation, driven by an insatiable force, equipped with a mind that amplifies every failure. This is the root of Schopenhauer's profound pessimism. He concluded that since existence is driven by this irrational, suffering-inducing will, the only logical response is radical asceticism. We must suppress our desires, starve the will, and withdraw from the material world through extreme self-denial and deep artistic contemplation. Chapter summary: The human intellect is a slave to a blind, aimless evolutionary drive, making our advanced consciousness a curse that magnifies suffering through memory and anticipation. Chapter 3. The Collapse of the Sacred and the Rise of Nihilism. While Schopenhauer provided a masterful diagnosis of human suffering, it was his greatest admirer and rival Friedrich Nietzsche, who realized denying the will was not a cure, but another symptom of decay. Nietzsche recognized that Western civilization was hurtling toward an existential crisis of unprecedented magnitude. For over 1,000 years, religion mitigated common suffering. It provided a comforting narrative. The pain of this world was a temporary test, a preparation for an eternal, perfect afterlife. All morality and truth were guaranteed by a divine authority. But in the 19th century, scientific discovery, the Enlightenment and secular rationalism began to erode this foundation. Nietzsche delivered one of history's most misunderstood pronouncements. God is dead, and we have killed him. This was not a joyful declaration of atheistic triumph. It was a terrifying warning of an impending psychological cataclysm. If the absolute metaphysical foundation of reality collapses, what happens to the entire superstructure of human morality built upon it? Without a divine guarantor, good and evil lose their objective reality. Without a promised heaven, the sufferings of this earth suddenly appear completely meaningless. Nietzsche saw that society had destroyed its belief in the divine, yet still clung to Christian morality. We continue to preach equality, pity, and the sanctity of life, even though the metaphysical root of these values has been severed. This contradiction gives birth to modernity's most dangerous phenomenon, nihilism. Nihilism is the radical recognition that existence has no inherent meaning, no predetermined purpose, and no objective value. As traditional structures fall away, we stare into an infinite, silent abyss. We experience this nihilism today in a highly visceral way. Deprived of grand narratives, we flounder in a sea of relativism, attempting to fill the God-shaped void with cheap substitutes. We worship celebrities, hoping their glamour will impart meaning to our mundane lives. We become fanatical adherents to political ideologies, transforming partisan dogma into a new secular religion. Heretics are cancelled and exiled in the digital public square. We chase endless wealth, equating net worth with existential worth, yet deep down, we feel the rot and profound disconnect. Nietzsche understood that when meaning is not provided by the heavens, humans will succumb to despair unless they are strong enough to forge it themselves. The death of God leaves us stranded on a vast, featureless ocean, stripped of our compass. For the weak, this means drowning in cynicism and apathy. But for the strong, it is the ultimate opportunity for liberation. Chapter summary: the destruction of absolute religious and moral foundations has plunged modernity into a crisis of nihilism, leaving individuals desperately seeking meaning in hollow secular substitutes. Chapter 4: the three metamorphoses of the spirit. If the old values are dead and the world is inherently devoid of predetermined purpose, how does an individual navigate this terrifying freedom? How do we transform from passive victims into active creators of meaning? Nietzsche maps out this exact psychological and spiritual journey in Thus Spoke Zarathustra. Through the allegory of the three metamorphoses of the spirit, the camel, the lion, and finally, the child, let us deeply examine where you currently reside on this spectrum. The first metamorphosis is the camel, the beast of burden, the archetype of obedience, duty, and endurance. The camel kneels down readily, asking the world, "What is the heaviest burden? Tell me, so I may bear it and prove my strength." Almost everyone you know begins and often ends their life as a camel. The burdens are the imposed expectations of society, parents, and culture. You must get a prestigious degree, secure a safe corporate job, marry by a certain age, take on crushing debt for a suburban house. The camel accepts all these heavy demands without question. It marches silently into the scorching desert of mundane existence, enduring a soulless job, loveless marriage, and endless bills. The camel believes that through sacrifice and conformity, it is achieving virtue. But eventually, if the spirit is strong enough, the camel realizes the desert is empty and the burdens bring no reward. The weight becomes intolerable. In the depths of the loneliest desert, the second metamorphosis occurs. The camel transforms into the lion. The lion is the embodiment of defiance, anger, and absolute rejection. The lion does not want to carry burdens anymore. It wants to capture freedom and be lord in its own desert. But to achieve freedom, the lion must fight the ultimate enemy, the dragon named Thou Shalt. Every golden scale on this dragon represents a 1,000-year-old value, societal commandment, and cultural expectation. The dragon speaks with the voice of tradition, demanding submission. The lion answers, I will! The lion is the spirit of destruction. It smashes the idols, rejects the corporate ladder, discards family expectations, and says a sacred no to the oppressive morality of the herd. But the lion has a tragic limitation. It is excellent at destroying false values, but it cannot create new ones. It can defend its empty territory, but cannot build a meaningful reality within it. To create, a final metamorphosis is required. The roaring lion must transform into the child. The child is innocence and forgetting, a new beginning, a game, a sacred yes. The child does not carry the burdens of the past like the camel, nor harbor the bitter anger of the lion. It approaches life as play, creates its own rules, and acts from pure, spontaneous authenticity. The child represents the highest echelon of human development, the individual who has broken free from external validation and begun to forge their own values from existence's raw material. The tragedy of modern life is that millions are trapped forever as camels, crushed under mortgages and expectations, while those who become lions often get stuck in perpetual angry rebellion. Chapter summary: Spiritual liberation requires enduring the burdens of society as a camel, destroying oppressive traditions as a defiant lion, and ultimately becoming a child to create new, authentic values. Chapter 5: The Apollonian Dream and the Dionysian Intoxication. To fully understand the nature of creating one's own values, we must plunge deeper into Nietzsche's analysis of the human psyche, specifically his distinction between the Apollonian and Dionysian forces. In ancient Greek mythology, Apollo is the god of light, reason, order, and individuation. The Apollonian force represents our deep desire for structure, boundaries, and predictability. It is the drive that creates mathematics, architecture, laws, and the illusion that we are separate, autonomous egos in control of our destinies. Apollo gives us the comforting dream of a rational universe. Dionysus, on the other hand, is the god of wine, intoxication, chaos, and primal ecstasy. The Dionysian force is the dark, surging, irrational undercurrent of life itself. It destroys boundaries, shatters the illusion of the individual ego, and plunges us into the ecstatic, terrifying unity of nature. It is the raw will described by Schopenhauer, but while Schopenhauer advocated for retreat, Nietzsche advocated for embrace. Modern Western culture has become dangerously hyper-Apollonian, obsessed with metrics, productivity, and risk management. We want to eradicate sickness, eliminate danger, and box human passion into safe, sanitized categories. We hide our dead, deny our primal urges, and live largely in our anxious brains. We have created a society so structured that it is slowly suffocating the human spirit. Nietzsche argued that true greatness and high art occur only when these two forces intersect. The Apollonian dream gives structure to the terrifying power of the Dionysian chaos. Without Dionysus, art and life become lifeless, rigid, and sterile. Without Apollo, life descends into self-destructive madness. Therefore, to navigate the nihilistic age, we cannot merely rely on cold rationality. We must reconnect with the Dionysian energy within us, acknowledging We are animals driven by passions and instincts. This brings us to Nietzsche's most potent and misinterpreted concept, the will to power. Contrary to tyrants' misuse, it is primarily an internal, psychological concept about conquering yourself. Every living organism fundamentally seeks to discharge its strength, to grow, to overcome obstacles, and to master its environment. Happiness is not the absence of pain, but the feeling that power is increasing. When a musician masters a complex piece after hours of practice, or an athlete pushes through agony to break a record, they are not seeking a painless state. They seek suffering to magnify their internal power. The will to power transforms suffering from a meaningless tragedy into the essential raw material for greatness. Chapter summary: True human vitality. Ours is from the synthesis of rational order and primal chaos, harnessing suffering as the essential resistance needed to cultivate personal power and greatness. Chapter 6: The Eternal Return and the Ultimate Test of Existence. We now arrive at the most demanding and terrifying psychological concept ever proposed. In Western philosophy, born in August 1881, while Nietzsche walked through the woods along Lake Silvaplana, he was struck by a vision so profound that it altered his entire thought. The eternal return of the same. Imagine a demon steals after you into your loneliest loneliness and speaks these words: "This life as you now live it and have lived it, you will have to live once more and innumerable times more. Every pain and joy, every thought and sigh will return in the exact same succession." How would you react to this terrifying proposition? If the universe is infinite in time, but composed of finite energy and matter, every possible configuration must eventually repeat endlessly. You will be born again, live this exact same life, make the exact same mistakes, suffer the exact same heartbreaks, and die the exact same death, over and over for all eternity. The concept is not necessarily about literal physics. It is the ultimate psychological test. For most people, this idea is a crushing nightmare. If you are trapped in a soul-crushing job, toxic relationship, or drowning in regrets, the idea of repeating it forever would make you curse the demon. The modern individual spends their entire life looking for escapes, hoping for a better tomorrow, praying for an afterlife, waiting for retirement, always believing real life is somewhere in the future. The eternal return annihilates all escapism, trapping you absolutely in the present reality. But Nietzsche asks, what if you could reach a state so powerful that you would call this the most divine thing? What if you could look at every humiliation, failure, and moment of despair in your life and say, yes, I would do it all again? This is what Nietzsche calls amor fati, the love of one's fate. It is not merely tolerating misery. It is a joyful, active embrace of everything that has happened to you, because every agonizing step forged the person you are today. If you change even one tear from your past, you unravel the entire tapestry of your current existence. Amor fati requires us to stop wishing reality was different. It demands that we stop clinging to resentment over injustices and stop fantasizing about alternative timelines. To love fate is to recognize that deep suffering is required for sublime joy. It is the ultimate rejection of Schopenhauer's pessimism. Instead of hiding from life's pains, we must drink the cup of existence down to the very dregs, accepting beauty and horror as one. If you conduct your life so that you sincerely wish for it to repeat for eternity, you have truly mastered the art of existence. Chapter summary: The ultimate measure of human greatness is the ability to unconditionally love your exact fate, willingly embracing every joy and suffering to repeat for all eternity. Chapter 7: The Overman and the Creation of New Meaning. If we accept the eternal return, reject the herd's artificial constraints, and embrace our will to power, what do we become? Nietzsche gives us a vision of the next stage of human evolution, the Overman. He declares that man is a rope tied between beast and overman, a rope over an abyss. Humanity is not a final destination. It is merely a transitional bridge. The overman is the individual who has fully realized the implications of the death of God and has accepted the responsibility of becoming their own ultimate authority. The overman does not seek validation from the masses, nor really on pre-packaged ideologies, political tribes, or dogmatic religions. They navigate chaos and impose their own form upon it. They transform their life into an aesthetic work of art. But we must look closely at the man who conceived this astonishing vision. Friedrich Nietzsche was not a triumphant, physically powerful conqueror. He was the exact opposite, a man plagued by terrible migraines, near blindness, and severe gastrointestinal agony. He spent much of his life wandering in obscurity across Europe. He experienced profound loneliness and heartbreaking rejection, most notably from Lou Andreas Salome, whose refusal to marry him plunged him into suicidal despair. He had no followers during his lifetime, and his books barely sold. A few hundred copies. In January 1889, on the streets of Turin, his mind finally broke. Seeing a coachman brutally whipping a horse, Nietzsche burst into tears, threw his arms around the animal's neck to protect it, and collapsed. He never recovered his sanity. He spent the last 11 years in a state of mute, catatonic dementia, cared for by the very mother and sister whose values he disdained. How do we reconcile the tragic, broken reality of the man with the heroic philosophy he preached? The answer is that his philosophy was forged in the very crucible of his suffering. Nietzsche did not write about the will to power because he felt powerful. He wrote about it because he was weak, and philosophy was his weapon of self-preservation. He understood that sickness and solitude could either crush a man into nihilism or serve as the ultimate pressure cooker for genius. He took the shattered fragments of his painful existence and alchemized them into a timeless masterpiece that would electrify future generations. He walked into the deepest caverns of human suffering and left a flaming torch for the rest of us to find our way out. The tragedy of his life is the ultimate proof of his philosophy. Greatness is not measured by the absence of struggle, but by the capacity to turn the ugliest truths into the most sublime art. Chapter summary: The overman assumes total responsibility for creating their own values in a meaningless world, proving that the highest human greatness is forged solely through the alchemy of profound suffering. As we draw to the end of our deep exploration, we must bring these towering philosophies back down to the reality of your immediate existence. We began by asking why we feel so lost in a world of abundance. Schopenhauer showed us that our inherent desires will always produce suffering and boredom, guaranteeing that the pursuit of external happiness is a mathematical trap. Nietzsche then took us through the abyss of nihilism, warning us that without absolute beliefs, we risk succumbing to despair. But crucially, he provided the antidote. Life is not about comfort. It is not about finding a path with no obstacles, nor is it about seeking a guru to hand you a pre-packaged meaning. Meaning is not something that pre-exists in the universe waiting to be discovered under a rock. It is a heavy, forged hammer that you must swing with your own two hands. It is created exclusively through the struggle of overcoming resistance. If you are suffering today from heartbreak, career failure, or deep existential loneliness, you must stop viewing that suffering as an injustice. Stop seeking the sympathy of the herd. Your pain is the unformed clay of your existence. You must embrace the spirit of the lion to destroy the false narratives holding you back and evolve into the child to create a life you would joyfully repeat for all eternity. Life is brutal, chaotic, and entirely devoid of inherent purpose. But that is exactly what makes it beautiful, because that empty canvas means you are the sole architect of your destiny. If this deep immersion into the philosophy of meaning and sickness has brought you clarity, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It helps enormously in continuing our explorations into the hidden architecture of the human mind. I leave you with one final, uncompromising question to reflect upon in the darkness. If absolutely no preordained meaning exists in this vast universe, are you brave enough to shoulder the responsibility of creating it entirely yourself?